Hey, health junkies! It's time for The Health Fix. Join your host, Dr. Janine Krause, as she gives you a dose of what you need to know and do right now to take control of your health from the inside out, to rebel against aging, look damn good, fight stress, and laugh every day.
Hello there, health junkies. Welcome to another episode of The Health Fix. I'm your host, Dr. Janine Krause. Today's episode, I'm going to be talking about how to fix your leaky gut and your metabolism with the help of peptides. So in particular, I'm going to be talking about two peptides today, BPC 157, known as Body Protective Complex 157, and MOTS, MOTS-c. And I will explain both of those in terms of how I'm finding them useful to help with leaky gut and metabolism. I don't know how many folks come into my office during the week and they're frustrated that their body just won't drop weight. They're frustrated that they're becoming more and more sensitive to foods as they get older. And it's just downright annoying that their list of foods they can enjoy is getting less. They're reacting more to alcohol. They're just losing out on the fun in life. And so I'm, of course, always on the lookout for things that can help us to be healthier and be able to have more of a defense against the outside world. And your gut, when it's leaky, is pretty much allowing everything to come in, and you're having a lot of immune system reactions. So today I'm going to talk about how I've been finding that BPC 157 is helping compared to my usual go-tos like L-glutamine or even some of my mucilaginous herbs, which sounds gross, but my licorice root and my marshmallow root. So stay tuned. I'm going to talk all about all these goodies and how they are being helpful in my office. So I had episode 128 where I talked about peptides. And so if you're wanting to know a little bit more on the background of peptides and myself, head back to episode 128 and you can hear me talking about peptides as possibly being the future of medicine. And now that I've had a few months more of working with them, I'm pretty convinced they're amazing and they do help. Not only in myself, I've also seen some progress now in some patients. I've had enough time to try it out on a couple folks, and I'm pretty impressed. So today I'm talking about my repair of my leaky gut. Since I was a kid, I've had probably what I would call a terrible gut, and I've been in and out of different types of therapies throughout my life to try to help my gut. And I was becoming more and more sensitive to foods, things of that nature. And I'm not going to lie that stress is involved as well, as is for most people. We live stressful lives. And so I was trying to find something that would really work to help to keep my food sensitivities down to a minimum, because it did seem that over time I was reacting to food after food after food to the point where I wasn't even sure what to eat anymore and afraid that I would get a rash just based on just breathing air at some points in my life. So this day and age, I have been taking BPC 157 compounded by Tailor Made Compounding Pharmacy in Kentucky. And it's a capsule. I take one capsule every single day, and I'm almost into 3 months of continuous therapy for my leaky gut. And at this point, I've tested some foods, and I found that some foods I still react to, and others I don't as much. It seems that I can go out to eat and not feel horrible after going out to eat. And yes, I've indulged in a couple sweets, and I've had a couple drinks, and I'm doing okay. Whereas before, I wasn't doing so great. So why do I talk about myself on this podcast? Well, I have patients I can talk about as well, and my story seems to be very similar compared to a lot of the patients that I see. And you might be thinking to yourself, well, geez, if you haven't figured it out yet, how can you help anybody else? Well, yeah, and that's why I'm here. That's why I am here on this podcast telling you about peptides, because leaky gut and having gut issues is a tough condition to have and find a solution for. It's an ongoing process. You have to maintain it. And ultimately, over time, when you can't remove stressors from someone's life, you have to find another solution. And I think BPC 157 might be that solution, because I'm always looking for something that's going to take hold faster and it's going to be more effective. And I do think it seems to be the answer. All right, so why did I choose BPC 157 as the peptide that I wanted to have to help my gut? Well, basically it has to do with research. I'm a data geek. If you haven't figured that out by now, if this is the first time listening to my podcast, if you listen to a few more, you will hear me spout off data. And what I was seeing with BPC 157 is a lot of research coming out of Russia, a lot of research coming out of Croatia. And really, the research was based in successful therapy in treatment of gastric ulcers, liver conditions, pancreas conditions, and tissues and wounds. BPC 157, in addition to helping with the gut lining, is incredible for helping with tendon and ligament sprains and strains. And I've been injecting folks with BPC 157 in my office for a while now and seeing amazing results in that aspect. I just started to dive into using it for my gut. Now, in the same Croatian research that found BPC 157 useful for gut ulcers, they also found that the ulcers produced from chronic acid reflux healed up, and irritable bowel syndrome and disease symptoms in terms of flare seemed to do better when someone was taking BPC 157. Another interesting thing, I guess you could say, or curious thing, is that BPC 157 was found to be an antidote for overconsumption of non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, so NSAIDs. So if someone took too many, you could take BPC 157 and counter the negative side effects, which is kind of cool. So looking at that, combined with all of the multitudes of research showing that BPC 157 was able to heal persistent wounds in the gastric area, I thought, you know what, this is pretty amazing. Because before, keep in mind, if you've listened to any of my other podcasts on gut healing, I talk about L-glutamine, I talk about licorice root, I talk about marshmallow root. These are great tools, but they take a long time. They take 3 to 6 months to really take effect. And BPC has been found to be helpful in a matter of weeks, which is pretty cool. So with all of that, let me tell you how BPC kind of played out for me and some of my other guinea pigs that I have in my office that love to try this stuff with me. So the first week I tried BPC 157, it cleaned my gut out. It was like a gut detox. I had looser stools. I didn't have accidents or anything. It wasn't crazy like that. It wasn't like a colonoscopy prep kind of situation. But it did clean me out. I was going to the bathroom a little bit more frequently. Things were a little bit looser. Then, after about 2 weeks, things started to seem normal. And I started to get those beautiful bowel movements that everyone likes to talk about. And yes, I'm talking about my poop with y'all. Yep. Hey, full disclosure, this is going to be a lot of poop talk for the next couple minutes. So you can fast forward if you don't want to hear it. But my bowels started to regulate. It seemed like they were more productive. I just felt like my abdomen was flatter. I wasn't puffy and wasn't bloaty. And that was pretty cool. So that started at about 2 weeks of taking the capsules. Now, fast forward to almost 3 months, I'm feeling pretty good. In that time frame, I learned, if you listen to my last podcast that I just released on nitric oxide, I learned that nitric oxide can help enhance the effects of BPC 157. Now, that makes sense. If you're trying to heal a particular tissue and you don't have good circulation, well, of course, taking something that's going to boost circulation throughout the whole body will help with healing. And so it's like a supercharger for the peptide that you're taking, which, of course, I'm all for if I can supercharge results. Now, at this point, I have played with certain foods that I had reactions to before, and I started trying to reintroduce them to see what my gut would do. Because in all of this, keep in mind, I've had digestive issues since I was probably 7 or 8 years old. So this is a long term of gut issues. And what I'm seeing here is that certain foods that I had no idea that I had such strong reactions to as a kid. It took me years, of course, to discover this. So basically what I'm trying to say is it's long-term damage here. So trying out the BPC 157, I did learn a couple of tricks. One in particular, you want to have the BPC 157 compounded. And I use Tailor-Made Compounding Pharmacy in Kentucky. There are other pharmacies that compound peptides. I just happen to like Tailor-Made the best. So if you're looking for a doctor that does get peptides compounded, you definitely want to make sure that they're using a quality compounding pharmacy, not ordering things from China and compounding it themselves. That never ends well. Now, online, there is a doctor named Dr. Seeds that sells capsules of BPC 157. He's kind of the grandfather, if you will, or the leader of the peptide movement. I haven't tried his products. I think they're probably just fine. I just happen to like mine compounded. The other reason I like mine compounded is I have the ability to get capsules that are dye-free, and they're veggie caps, so that there's less impact on my gut. Because when I first dove into trying BPC 157, there were capsules that were available from the same compounding pharmacy that I use now, Tailor-Made. They had a dye, and I thought to myself, ooh, I don't know if those are going to go so well with my gut. So I tried them anyway, and no, they didn't. My stomach did not like that. So definitely looking for a company that has the veggie caps that are dye-free. One little caveat. So after using those for almost 3 months now, I feel pretty good. I'm not reacting to every little thing. And by that, I mean, I would wake up most mornings with puffy eyes, and my skin would just feel puffy. Just, ugh. Like lack of circulation, but also that something was happening. I also had a strong tie to insomnia and food sensitivities. And for some reason, it would be just that not much of an irritant in my body that it would keep me awake at night. And this is common. This happens to a lot of people. And so my big reactions that I was looking for was puffiness in my eyes, puffiness in my skin, stomach aches, and insomnia. And so at one point in my life, earlier this spring, I was having trouble being able to even go to restaurants without having some sort of reaction, pretty much within 20 minutes or so of eating. But now I'm able to go out a little bit more and finding that I do okay when I eat out, go to friends' houses, places of that nature. Now, I do still have issues with dairy, corn, flavoring agents, fried chips, and almonds in particular. So I'm going to see what the next couple months bring of taking BPC 157 and see if I can reduce those allergies even further. So stay tuned. Let's see how things go. What I ultimately hope for folks is that they reduce their sensitivities quite a bit to the point where maybe there's only a few foods that they react negatively to, or maybe there's none. I mean, that would be awesome. But that would be something that I highly recommend paying attention to, is getting to know yourself. Get to know what you react to. Then you'll be able to utilize peptides better because you can do the troubleshooting on your own. After all, my podcast is all about helping you to be your own health advocate here, because if you don't know yourself, it's going to be very hard to have a doc help you to help yourself. You got to know yourself really well. You got to be able to troubleshoot. And unfortunately, where healthcare is at today, being your own advocate is the way to go. And so that's my purpose of being here for you. So now you know a little bit about BPC 157 and its effect on the gut and how it's affected my gut. And I highly recommend checking it out. I'll put some links to Tailor-Made Compounding Pharmacy in my podcast notes. So if you have a naturopathic doctor or a functional medicine doctor near you, or a doc who's just open to helping you out to get these items, go to those websites and get the BPC 157 and get started. Now, in terms of side effects of BPC 157, or if there is any allergy possibility, of course, there's a possibility to react to the actual body protein complex. It's minimal. I have not heard very many reactions out there in terms of the data, but do know that that's possible. Since they're capsules, like I said before, just make sure you get the veggie dye-free ones, so you're not getting the dyes. Okay, so now let's move on to the next peptide that I tried out. It's called MOTS-c, MOTS-c, and this guy is known to help the adrenal glands. And in particular, they're known as the adaptogenic peptides. And so who doesn't need a little help with helping their body to manage stress, helping their body to communicate between gut and brain? Hey, I think personally everybody could probably use this peptide. Now, the caveat with this peptide is it's not a capsule like the BPC 157. Unfortunately, it is an injectable. So you have to inject it subcutaneously, meaning into the skin. And typically, I will inject this one into the skin and my belly every day. I do it during the daytime, found it was better during the day to do this guy. So what I did with MOTS-c on myself is that I stopped my trial of the CJC ipamorelin peptide. So if you listen to my episode 128, you probably heard me say something about CJC ipamorelin, which was a growth hormone booster. I was using it to help me with sleep. Now, if you remember when I talked about BPC 157, I said that I had some food sensitivities that might have been keeping me up as well. So I was using both the BPC and the CJC ipamorelin at the same time to try to help me out there. And I decided that I wanted to switch from the CJC to the MOTS-c. I was also noticing some metabolic change with the CJC, but I wanted a little bit more because I think my main issue isn't the reduced growth hormone at this age. I'm in my early 40s. I think that my issue might be more of the MOTS-c. So I decided let's try it out and see how things go. So MOTS-c, being known as the adrenal adaptogenic peptide, can boost energy. It can also improve athletic performance, exercise recovery, and help with insulin resistance. Now, when I started this podcast out, I had mentioned that I have a lot of people that come into my office that are complaining of fatigue. They're complaining of lack of energy when they're exercising, or they're talking about not having good recovery after exercise. And then top that on top of gaining weight. A lot of ladies that I see in my office tend to see weight gain happen after a hysterectomy or once they head into menopause. MOTS-c is that peptide that can have effect on this change that happens with menopause and surgical menopause, otherwise meaning the hysterectomy. I'm going to tell you about that in a little bit. So let's talk about MOTS-c as what it is. It's a 16 amino acid peptide. So there's 16 amino acids that make up this protein because peptides are small proteins. And this guy is most activated in your mitochondria, meaning it's in the factories of every single one of your cells, which unfortunately, as we get older, they're not as efficient as they once used to be. That's just part of aging. It's also part of being toxic, meaning environment, meaning drinking too much, meaning too much stress, meaning not being able to detoxify off of frankenfoods, all of those different things. Trash your metabolism and trash your mitochondria. So MOTS-c is there to help your mitochondria, aka your metabolism, work better, which is pretty cool. So in research, we have found in a lot of cases that folks with type 2 diabetes have significantly lower levels of MOTS-c. Well, that's interesting because MOTS-c actually has a function in terms of preventing insulin resistance and diet-related obesity. So think about that for a minute. This particular peptide can go into your system and help you to be able to tolerate sugar better, carbohydrates better. Now, I'm not saying that you can take this and you can eat copious amounts of carbohydrates. It doesn't work that way. In fact, I've only been on it for 2 weeks right now, and I'm working with balancing out my levels of carbohydrates to see how I feel with this. I have gone to days where I've had 20 grams of carbohydrates, so that's like a ketosis day. And I've gone to days where I've had over 150 grams of carbohydrates a day with the MOTS-c just to see if I felt any different. Now, I'll be honest, I didn't feel a spike or a drop because I was kind of wondering, would I feel change from having it in my system with that range of carbohydrates? I didn't, but I wonder if certain individuals who have insulin resistance might notice that. So you might feel different, or you might feel more energy. You might feel more energy after eating a meal that has more carbohydrates, things of that nature. Like I said, with all of these peptides, if you're interested in trying them, you have to make sure that you're keeping a journal, keeping a data log on how you feel, how these things interact with your body. So I haven't seen anything yet, but that doesn't mean that there isn't something around the corner. Have I lost drastic amounts of weight on MOTS-c after 2 weeks? No, I don't have a miracle story for you that says I dropped weight. But what I can tell you is that I do feel like metabolically I'm not as puffy. Same thing as like I was saying with the BPC 157. I feel like something's happening, as if my body's more efficient. And I definitely am not tired after my workouts. I feel good. Would I say I feel 100% better than I did prior to? I would say maybe I'm feeling like 50% improvement after workouts. I'm feeling, like I could maybe go run after I just lifted weights, something of that nature. So I'd say that's positive. All right, enough about me. Let's go back to the data. So with this component of MOTS-c preventing and also having the ability to reverse insulin resistance, this is pretty cool. So what is insulin resistance? That means when you have sufficient amounts of insulin in your body, but that insulin is not being able to effectively take glucose into your cells to give you energy. So basically, you have insulin floating around and it's not doing much for you at all. So that's a bummer, because you definitely want it to be able to help you to shuttle the glucose into your cells to give you energy. So what happens in this case is those glucose molecules that aren't taken in for energy into your cells, they end up getting converted to fat and you gain weight. And insulin resistance is probably one of the number one reasons for weight gain as we get older, and especially with females in terms of imbalance after menopause. Now, why would I venture to be so bold and say that's probably the reason? Well, unfortunately, a lot of us are eating way too many processed carbohydrates, or we're eating way too many carbohydrates that are fresh carbohydrates, like too much fruit, too much in terms of fruit drinks, too much juicing, all of those things. Yes, they're healthy, but in excess, not so great. To be honest with you, I really do think that every single one of us has our own carbohydrate amount that we can consume. And the best way to know that is really to get out a glucometer, so a glucose test kit. The Contour One Touch is a great one, or Contour Next One, that's what it's called. That one is one of the great ones that it's cheap. You can test yourself and see what is your blood glucose when you wake up in the morning after you've been fasting for at least 10 hours. What's your blood glucose 2 hours after a meal? And write down what your meals are. Look at what you ate in terms of grams of carbohydrates and how did it affect your blood sugar. That'll give you a very good idea as to how you're doing with carbohydrates and what things affect you more than others. You'd be surprised. Some people are affected by tomatoes, others aren't. We're all unique. And in the same respect, if you are wanting to experiment with MOTS-c, I do highly recommend you test your blood sugar first, know where you're at with carbs, and then use the MOTS-c to see if it changes your reaction to the carbohydrates. As of right now, at 2 weeks in, I have not seen anything in terms of a change, but I'll let you know when I do my follow-up on this as to what happens. So how does MOTS-c work? It actually stimulates your body to uptake glucose, so blood sugar, and it increases the utilization of the glucose. And so what's happening here is it's boosting your body's ability to take in and process glucose to give you more energy. That's huge. Now, in the same respect, this is going to help folks to not develop diabetes, so it could be a preventative mechanism here. It could also possibly be for those who are on that really big border of being pre-diabetic and diabetic. This could be a novel way to help with healing there. Now, along the same line, those who have chronically elevated blood sugars are also going to have more inflammation in their arteries. And research has shown with MOTS-c, it can actually protect against coronary artery lining dysfunction and inflammation. And so what happens here is MOTS-c goes in and it's actually going to reduce the inflammation producing white blood cells in the area. Because why? It's going to bring in glucose faster into the cells. And so those white blood cells are not going to be as active responding to the elevated glucose bumping against the arteries, causing little tears. So that's pretty awesome in my book there. Now, another thing that has been found with MOTS-c is that when we're under stress, and I'm talking about metabolic stress, meaning like too much glucose in the bloodstream, MOTS-c is going to get into every single one of your cells, so the inside of your cells, and increase the cell's resistance to the increased stressor of elevated glucose, also some inflammation cytokines, so meaning white blood cells being elevated in response to the glucose ripping up the sides of your arteries. Now, what that means is if MOTS-c is in the system working on metabolic stressors, it's going to slow down advanced aging and stress that comes on the body with aging. So it's also considered an anti-aging peptide. So not only is it going to improve your insulin sensitivity, it's going to reduce your body weight, it's going to reduce inflammation in your body. It's also going to work on fatty liver. So it's been found to help prevent fats from building up in the liver, which is also another common side effect of having blood sugar elevated for long periods of time, because your body can't do anything with that elevated. So how does MOTS-c remove fat from the body? It actually improves the utilization of the fats by stimulating something called the Carnitine Shuttle. And if you've heard me talk in previous podcasts with helping with fat burn metabolically, we often use a amino acid known as L-carnitine. And that's what this Carnitine Shuttle is doing. Carnitine combined with magnesium help to increase the utilization of fats in the body. And so one caveat to think about with this MOTS-c, you also do need to make sure you have the minerals and the amino acids necessary in your body to be able to carry out these processes. Sugar, it turns it to fat. And where does the fat go? It's either going to go on you or in your... So as I mentioned earlier in my podcast, there's a lot of ladies coming into my office complaining about weight gain after hysterectomies or while going into menopause. They're always asking me, can MOTS-c help? Because of course I'm talking about it a lot these days. And so yes, absolutely. What has been found is after one has gone through a hysterectomy, it's been found that MOTS-c can regulate fat metabolism by increasing energy expenditure, inhibiting fat expansion, so the amount of fat that's being deposited on the body. It can reduce fat cell size. It also inhibited the fat inflammation response and helped with the utilization of brown fat and reducing the accumulation of white fat. So this whole concept of brown fat versus white fat, we definitely want some of our brown fat. That's our metabolically active fat. But the white fat's kind of our storage, icky fat, if you will. And so the fact that it's helping the body to use the switch to use one versus the other, pretty darn cool. So I'm seeing MOTS-c as being something that I definitely need my postmenopausal ladies to get on board with to help to prevent the weight gain, to help to prevent all of the side effects that come with menopause and hysterectomies in terms of the metabolic factors. So this is something that's pretty novel. I can't wait to see how this plays out as well. Now, another cool thing that's been studied with MOTS-c is the promotion of cold adaptation, meaning helping someone to adapt to cold better. Your liver. What was found in these studies is that MOTS-c treatment enhanced cold tolerance and reduced the movement of fats into the liver, and instead actually showed an effect of taking your brown adipose, using that more for your thermogenesis, so keeping you warm, and actually turning some of your white adipose into brown adipose. So what the heck did I just say? Basically, it was helping to get your body to be more thermogenically effective, so you could tolerate colder temperatures. So this makes me think of all of the studies with Wim Hof and the fella who loves to put himself into cold temperatures to help boost the immune system. There are a lot of people I know, including myself, that have some trepidations about being in cold temperatures and trying to boost the immune system that way. But maybe if I've been on MOTS-c long enough, I might actually be up for some of Wim Hof's studies. I'll let you know. All right, so those are kind of the summaries in terms of what's been found with MOTS-c, and so far it's pretty impressive. I don't want to put it out there as being this magical peptide that's going to solve all your problems, because you know what? You have to still take accountability for what you're putting in your mouth, what you're doing on a daily basis in terms of movement and hydration, sleep, taking care of yourself in terms of reducing stress, relaxation. All of that stuff still has to happen. This is just something that I think will help folks to get over the hump. Maybe also something to kind of get the right switches turned on in terms of things that can go south with stress, with hysterectomies, with heading into menopause, even male menopause in my book, same kind of thing. I don't want to discount you guys. If you're out there listening to this, it's not all about ladies on the show. I definitely want you to have your component here too, because I think that just as much as ladies respond to stress negatively, guys do as well, and it affects our hormones, and switches get switched off and other things get turned on. And I think MOTS-c, if we take a big summary of MOTS-c, I think what it's doing for the body is that it's switching things into their proper regulatory states where they should be when they become deranged with stress, crazy things happening with hormones, leaky guts, and things of that nature. So how do you get more information on peptides? Well, my podcast notes at drjkrausend.com. I'm going to put out some more information there in terms of every study that I highlighted today on the podcast. PubMed, also always a great resource. Just type in BPC 157 or type in MOTS-c, and you're going to find all the latest published articles on this information. Ben Greenfield is also a fellow podcaster out there who talks a lot about peptides. So take a look at his website as well and see what he has to say, and check out his latest podcast on peptides. Now, as for me, I'm going to give you an update after 4 months of being on MOTS-c. I want to do a couple months on it. At this point, I've only been on it for 2 weeks, so I don't feel like I have enough information, but I was just so excited about all the crazy recent research on it that I think that I need to share this. I can't keep this a secret. I really want folks to know about it and start researching it and see if it is a fit for you, and also to be able to find doctors that can help prescribe this for you, because I don't want folks getting this stuff off the black market from China. Please don't do that. Dangerous. So you will have information at my podcast notes at drjkrausend.com. I really hope that if you are out there struggling with weight gain, maybe you're menopausal, maybe you've had a hysterectomy early, maybe you're just struggling with a stinking leaky gut and finding that you are having trouble even just eating, these 2 peptides could make a world of difference for you, and I think they're worth checking out. So I always love giving information to folks. If you guys have questions for me, please hit me up. My submission for questions is on my website at drjkrausend.com. I love answering questions. My next podcast is going to be a question that I got from a listener, so you definitely want to stay tuned. It's going to be all about Hashimoto's thyroiditis and blood sugar issues, so stay tuned for that one. Now, if you're enjoying this podcast, please go over to iTunes and give me a good rating. I want to share this information with the universe. I don't want folks to be out there wondering what to do with their health on their own. This day and age, you got to be your own health advocate, and I'm here to help you. So, You've survived another episode of The Health Fix. I'm your host, Dr. Janine Krause. Have a great day, whatever you're doing. Hey everybody, Dr. Janine Krause here. If you liked what you heard today, then head over to drjkrausend.com to find my free resources and information to know when I post something new that's juicy that you might want to check out. Plus, head over to where you get your podcasts and subscribe, and write a review to help get the word out about me and help others at the same time to find me. It really does help, and I really appreciate all of your reviews.